Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As chairman of the Nash County Board of Commissioners, I now call to order the June 24, 2026 meeting of the Nash County Board of Commissioners. We start our meeting with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I will ask Commissioner Sue Leggett to lead us in our invocation and Commissioner Wayne Outlaw to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Let us all stand.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We're grateful for the opportunity for another day in your kingdom to do your work. Thank you for all of the blessings that you give us. And dear Lord, we ask for your grace and mercy as we live out our daily lives. Lord, we ask for your presence here this evening as we conduct the business of Nash County and learn about ways that we can positively impact the future of Nash County. These things we ask in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Would you join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before I get started, I want to welcome everyone to our meeting, and thank you very much for coming out and participating. And also, I want to say hallelujah to the farmers for the rain that we got and our lawn. So with that said, let's get started. I will call on our planning director, Adam Tyson, to get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to welcome everyone here tonight, and thank you for spending your Wednesday evening on such an important topic to the future of Nash County. We began this process of rewriting our Unified Development Ordinance just about a year ago with a kickoff meeting. Our current Unified Development Ordinance was adopted in 1998 and became effective in 1999. So we're working on 27 years under the same general set of regulations. Of course, it's been amended in minor ways many times since then. When we kicked off this process a year ago, we selected a planning consultant to assist us. That consultant was Withers Ravenel. Specifically, our project manager, who's going to be addressing us tonight, is Mr. Adam Culpepper here. Mr. Culpepper is uniquely suited to the task of rewriting Nash County's Unified Development Ordinance because he is a resident of Nash County and he is also a former employee of Nash County where he was our previous senior planner. As part of this process, we formed a steering committee that consisted of 3 members of our Board of Commissioners and 3 members of our Planning Board, as well as other advisors from various agencies and county departments who went through a series of 5 long and rigorous meetings and produced a list of 33 proposals for revising and updating and modernizing the land use development regulations in Nash County. And those 33 proposals are what we're here to discuss tonight, and they are on your handout that hopefully you got as you came in. Following that, we had a joint meeting of the entire Board of Commissioners and the entire Planning Board in late May. And as a result of that meeting, we reviewed those proposals, made some tweaks. But tonight is the first opportunity for the public and our local development community to actually come forward and weigh in on these different land use development proposals. Of course, the task that our board is faced with is the same one they're faced with almost every time they have a rezoning request, which is figuring out how to balance the county's rich tradition of agricultural and rural lifestyles with all the modern pressures of development. And so that is the unenviable task that our board has set before them in revising this ordinance. There are a couple things I want to cover right out of the gate because I know that people probably have a lot of questions about this. The first question is, when will this ordinance, when it's adopted, become effective? And that's an answer I don't know a specific date for yet. Part of it will depend on the public input we hear from tonight's meeting and what instructions we receive from our elected Board of Commissioners and our advisory planning board about what changes might need to be made to this list of proposals before we go forward. Once we settle that, we'll have to translate this list of proposals into specific ordinance language that will have to be brought forward for public review. Both our planning board and our Board of Commissioners will hold separate public hearings on the actual draft ordinance language once it has been completed. And so the public will be invited back at least those 2 times to speak to the board once these proposals have been translated into something more concrete in terms of actual enforceable ordinance language. The consultant and I also plan to hold an open house prior to those 2 meetings where we can meet with interested members of the public and members of the development community and try to answer more questions ahead of those 2 public hearings. Right now, my best guess is that we will probably be hovering around adopting this new ordinance either in late summer or early fall of this year. But again, some of that timeline will hinge on the input we get tonight, as well as our elected officials' reactions to that input. I know a lot of people also have questions because they've emailed me and I haven't been able to get back to everyone about what does this new ordinance mean for projects that were previously approved under our current regulations. And the answer to that is hopefully it means nothing. As long as you pursue your previously approved development project and basically don't abandon it for a period of 12 months or fail to hit the next milestone for a period of 12 months, then our ordinance recognizes those as pre-approved plans, and you can continue to develop them according to the rules that were in place at that time. So for instance, if you have a subdivision, it has a sketch plan approval, then you need to move on and submit a preliminary construction approval within 12 months of that sketch plan approval. Once you receive a preliminary construction approval, you need to build and record 400 feet of new road every 12-month period in order to keep that subdivision alive. Now, if you do allow a project to expire, then it will have to come back through the review process and will be subject to the new regulations. So let that be an incentive for you to keep your projects moving so that you don't have any surprises and they don't have to be reevaluated under the new set of regulations. I've heard some rumors earlier today that Nash County is going to require every residential neighborhood to install electric vehicle charging. Currently, our proposal is only to require that for high-traffic commercial developments or multifamily townhome developments. So there is not currently a proposal for electric vehicle charging for single-family dwelling neighborhood developments. And then finally, I know that a hot button topic in Nash County and really around the state and around the country is the development of data centers. One goal we have with this proposal is to recognize data centers as a land use because it's not currently named in our current ordinance, and to make sure that there's a clear process for approval and clear mandatory development standards that have to be met. Those development standards will involve things like separation distances, noise limitations, screening, utility usage restrictions. We don't know the details of what we're going to require there, but what we do know is that the feedback we've received from our elected officials so far is to strengthen those requirements and make them stricter than anything we've proposed up to now. We're not here to pass judgment on data centers as an industry, What we're here to do is to provide the appropriate regulatory tools to our elected officials so that if a data center is ever approved and built in Nash County, it's only because our elected officials have had a process that allows them to deliberately and intentionally decide that it would be a good fit for a particular piece of property. I think that covers all of the things I wanted to get out of the way at the beginning. In the run-up to this meeting, I did establish a mass email list that I bet a bunch of you probably were on, where I'm going to be continuing to provide updates about the UDO process as we go forward. If you are not on that email list, but you would like to be included in future announcements, there's a podium at the very back directly behind me with a pad, and if you would add your email address printed legibly, then I will happily incorporate your name or your email address into the future mass mailings that go out about the next steps for this project. And with that, I think I will pause and recognize Mr. Adam Culpepper from Withers Ravenel, who is going to give us a presentation. Following that presentation, I'll come up and speak a little bit about the guidelines for our public comment period, and then we'll open the floor to anybody who has anything that they'd like to share with us. But for now, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Adam. And
Mr. Chairman.
good evening, Ms. Culpepper.
Good evening. All right. So, as you all heard, my name is Adam Culpepper. We'll go through a couple introductions. I want to go through and talk through what we plan to go through as part of our agenda for tonight. Obviously, like I said, we're going to go through some introductions of my team. I have not been able to do this by myself. This is a team effort from Withers Ravenel. We'll briefly talk through the project schedules that Adam kind of did a quick overview of. Talk about the UDO approach and summary of recommended changes, which is the document that has been put online and should be in your hands, guiding our principles of what we're looking through as part of the Unified Development Ordinance update. And then really looking through the implementation action review. My intent of this meeting is to not be as long-winded in my talking as I was at our joint meeting. So I will do my best to do that. And we've made our best efforts in kind of shortening this presentation style to suit that accordingly, which also
Chair.
allows for the opportunity for public comment at the tail end.
Point of order. I would just ask Mr. Culpepper to speak up as loudly as he
Absolutely.
could, because you're back from the mic, and so I see some of them squinting out there.
Absolutely. I will do my best to do that. I will apologize if I lean back. If I see you pointing at me to run to the mic, I will do that.
Thank you.
Also, the ladies in the back, if y'all want some seats are available in between there if y'all want to sit down. Okay, good start.
All right, and then we'll go through some of those implementation actions that I talked about. It's a more concise version of presenting this stuff, and again, allowing the opportunity for those questions that myself and Mr. Tyson will be able to answer. As far as introductions, as I said, my name is Adam Culpepper. I've been the project manager. I'm the director of planning with Withers Ravenel. On my project team is Daniel Rao, and Kaylee Gills, one of our landscape architects, who's been fantastic in providing some of the diagrams that are in this ordinance. And then with me tonight is Jennifer Nelson. She's been instrumental in keeping this process moving along and helping me with some of the longer-winded typing as we've been going through this process. As Mr. Tyson mentioned, we've been going through at a pace to make sure that we're hitting every aspect that you guys are concerned with, that the community is concerned with, and we have been incorporating those into a unified development ordinance that is not a rewrite of your existing ordinance. It is a modification and update. With that, as part of our project team, we have the steering committee made up of Nash County commissioners and Nash County Planning Board members who have had to listen to me for a lot of time as we've gone through this. But the best part, and the thing that I want to note, this was not none of these 5 steering committee meetings have been just me talking the entire time. It has been incredibly good dialogue and conversation and implementing and understanding what we're talking about through this. And it's hard pressed to say we could have any better of a steering committee. They have been very I've been very grateful for the conversations that we've been able to have as we've gone through this process. There it goes. As far as the project schedule is concerned, like Mr. Tyson said, we started this with a joint kickoff in June of 2025. The bulk of the project has been the October to June now, Phase 3, where we have been going through all of our steering committee meetings, understanding where Nash County sees its growth and change, and where we want to implement this language in these updates into the ordinance. And that has been the largest chunk. And as we continue with this community workshop, and then preparing the finalization of the code and preparation for preparation for adoption, I think we have shown a lot of effort in really addressing these concerns and making sure it's clear and concise with what changes are being made. As part of that effort to be clear and concise, we have the UDO approach and summary of recommended changes. This document has been expanding since the first meeting that we had with you all in that first opening joint meeting. The intent of that document is to really spell out exactly what is changing. Because like I said, our goal is not to rewrite the whole ordinance so everyone has to go through it and see every single word that's new. We are showing where the questions were, where the conversation was, what the steering committee decided on, and what we would be presenting as part of the updated ordinance. That document is really focused on our key words that we try to spell out at every one of our steering committee meetings. This is a chance for us to organize the ordinance. Like, as Adam said, this is a 1998-99 ordinance. And with text amendments comes sometimes some disorganization. Things get put in interesting places. And the goal is to make sure that that's brought into a organization structure that makes it very simple for not only the board, the development community, but the citizens of Nash County who are concerned with what's going on, to be able to walk through and understand what the actual standards that they have to follow are. It shouldn't be a document that they have to bounce from one section to another, to another, to another. They should be able to cleanly read through and understand how a development or a subdivision is getting constructed and what standards it has to follow. In that same vein is simplifying. There has been countless things that we have gone through that we have found the need to simplify, whether that is just through improving some visuals, improving some of the tables that have been in there, and it kind of coincides with that last key word. It is making sure that we are simplifying and improving the visual structure of this whole process. To get back to that UDO approach and summary recommend changes, our biggest aspect is, so you all understand, is how to use this document. And it may look kind of confusing because it's word heavy, but that is what we've had to do. It's talking about the bolded text there in the document is really spelling out what were the initial concerns. Those concerns came from the land use plan that was done a few years prior. It was concerns that staff brought up as they have been kind of keeping a running list of things that they have heard from the general public, heard from board members, and ensuring that we are addressing those. Then finally, a lot of those concerns were reiterated or new concerns that were brought up as part of our opening joint meeting. You all were able to express your specific concerns, and we brought those into this plan to make sure that we would be addressing them. As part of that is the plan of action is the next thing. So we said, okay, you guys have these concerns. This is what Nash County sees as part of the land use plan. How are we going to address this? Or how, as a consultant, how are we planning to follow the understanding of what you're looking at? From that plan of action, we worked with staff, worked with the steering committee, and then determined an implementation action. So how are we going to address that? And really defining exactly what is being done. Some of the things are very detailed, some of the things are very simple, and we'll go through some of these implementation actions here in just a second. So, general updates as we're going through this. Like I said, Our biggest thing is ensuring that this is a more clear document, more accessible for the development standards, more readable by the general public and by yourselves at the board. And then ensuring that we're improving the diagrams, graphics, and flowcharts and tables that are in it to just make things easier. The process of going through this and the process of the development community, we're trying to make it as clear as possible through all this. So talking about that, is that expanding those diagrams and graphics. We have gone through everything that we could, improving some of the standards with the sign ordinance or the sign standards, improving graphics of visuals so people know what is happening there, and then really just to clean up the references for landowners and developers in the county. And then, like I said, providing those clearer, more accessible development standards, reducing the ambiguity, reducing things that were listed twice, 3 times throughout the ordinance, where what occurs often is a text amendment is heard, and it changes one thing, but it doesn't change one of the other places that it said. And so trying to reduce that and bring it into a concise document that doesn't have a point where staff is having to look at a separate standard and realize that they can't follow a rule or regulation because it's exempted somewhere else. So Article 1, we're going to get into some of these specifics. This is a very simple one because there was really only reformatting. We didn't change that section all that much. It was making sure that it was in the correct order and just really reformatting it to match the standards of the new ordinance. We do not fix what is not broken, and so we've made a point that that is not changing. So everything, all the text you will read in Article 1 is the same. In Article 2, when you get into the zoning districts and dimensional standards, we have a few things I want to hit on that we'll talk through in detail, where it was concerned over setbacks based on roadway classifications or traffic volume, and then providing visuals that really define some of those standards. So let's talk through some of those. So increasing setbacks based on NCDOT roadway classifications. The goal of this was to recognize and work with DOT. We were lucky enough to have a planning board member who is the DOT district engineer who has worked and served as part of not as the steering committee, but involved with the steering committee meetings. So we've been able to have those conversations. And the steering committee in that did recommend to adjust setbacks when you have roadways that are, I'm thinking of the classifications off the top of my head, and I'm blanking, but some of the higher arterial roads and things like that, increasing those setbacks for the opportunity where DOT might have to expand the roadway widths and prevent the circumstances where a home might be stuck far too close to the right-of-way, which we see in the past as we look through as Nash County has grown. There are homes that were originally on a dirt road that were 20 feet off of that dirt road is fine, but 20 feet or 15 feet off of a higher traffic asphalt NCDOT road has led to traffic concerns, safety concerns of those residents, and we've been ensuring that that is addressed as part of this plan. In the same vein as working with NCDOT, it's looking at the lot width requirements, and this is something that is tying our DOT standards for driveway separation to the lot width of single-family lots as part of minor subdivisions to ensure that when the traffic volume is greater than 1,000 average annual daily trips, that lot width would increase to 200 feet. So that driveway separations would match the 200-foot separation that is required by DOT. As far as dealing with lot types, one of the things that was brought up as a concern is flag lots and foot lots. Foot lots is a unique term in Nash County, where you can see by the diagram there, it is a lot that garners a full lot width and then next down to a very narrow path and then leads to a larger buildable area in the back of the lot. And this was often seen as a way to develop obscure, kind of odd-shaped lots to fit around some different standards. And then really just making sure all of these definitions are clearly signified with your corner lots, your interior lots, your through lots. Everything is clearly shown and defined as part of this process. With that, it has also been the prohibition of foot lots and flag lots. Well, flag lots were already prohibited. Foot lots were uniquely not, because they were an odd sort of caveat that matched the regulations but didn't match the intent of the regulations. And that has been something the steering committee was pressed to have, had concerned with. So that is something that they have recommended to remove the permitted use or permitted subdivision type of flag lots. Although not that often in the rural county area, multifamily or multi-unit standards are in the ordinance. There is the allowance as you get to a smaller lot size to have townhomes and apartment complexes listed as permitted. And as part of that, there was ambiguity in the standards of that section where it listed the size of the lots that required. And so what we had done is, based off of staff's interpretation, based off of our interpretation of the ordinance, added some clear standards for the minimum lot sizes of those use types. So adding a minimum lot size for a multifamily development, and then as units increase, they have to have a larger lot size. And this is just to kind of clearly standardize what is the minimum lot for a 10, 15, 30, 40, whatever it may be, multifamily or multi-unit housing type. And ensure that there's that clear, adequate spacing and necessary infrastructure within those. As we move into Article 3, our uses and permitted use standards, we'll talk a bit about a few specific items. One of those, well, actually, let me jump back. We'll deal with that. One of those specifically is the modernization of the table of permitted uses. The permitted use table, as it stands right now, is about 11 pages. It lists anything and everything that into the fine detail of different types of manufacturing uses that share very similar standards or are from the outside generally the same thing. Our goal with this is to simplify that so that there is not confusion, that it is easier to go through. We understand what manufacturing is. We don't need to say that it is specific to glass manufacturing versus some other type. They are the same thing. So we've been going through that with staff and cleaning up as much as we can. We've also been looking at accessory dwelling units, data centers, different types of dwellings, and some manufactured home standards. As far as data centers are concerned, like Mr. Tyson said, the goal of this ordinance is not to, is really to address data centers as a whole. It is not within the current ordinance. There are concerns from the community, from the board, from the steering committee, and we want to make sure that there are standards that will be able to, let me be clear on this. It is not something that is going to outright restrict, but it has clear development standards that address the concerns, whether that be noise, separation, things along those lines, and making sure those types of uses are in the appropriate district. And we have gone through and presented an example of what that text, that language could be. And we are modifying that based off of the discussion that we had at the joint meeting last month, and ensuring that the setbacks are increased and addressed accordingly. As far as accessory dwelling units are concerned, Yep. So as far as accessory dwelling units are concerned, that was something that was a concern of the land use plan being able to address, and it was something that we recognized in our review of the ordinance. Accessory dwelling units allow for an opportunity for affordable housing throughout Nash County. It allows for an opportunity for a income-based property for some people who are seeking to expand their property, or even just the easy, simple mother-in-law suite, or the opportunity to put their kid out in a house and still keep them close to home, but allow them the freedom to grow up and become young adults. With regard to multifamily units, that was similar in the vein of what we talked about as multifamily subdivisions, but multifamily units are your units that are considered by the North Carolina Building Code to be treated as single-family dwellings. And those are your duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. Those use types were allowed a little bit of leniency instead of being considered commercial, and they opened the door to be allowed under residential building code. And so we wanted to make sure that those were included and addressed as far as their definition, as far as where they are permitted, and expand where previously the ordinance only listed two-family dwellings or duplexes. And then it also sets the standard for multifamily, your apartments and use types like that, or condominiums, to a 5 or more family structure, and that is in line with again, the North Carolina Building Code. As we move into Article 4, this is where you get some of the wonderful graphics by our landscape architects, where we start talking about landscape standards and EV charging. As Adam Tyson mentioned, the goal of the EV charging requirements is not to go into as a requirement for single-family homes, but it is a requirement that has been proposed to go for commercial, larger scale commercial developments and multifamily, and ensuring that those standards match the surrounding counties around Nash County and similar size in fashion. So those standards have been recommended and implemented in the draft of the ordinance. And then the fun one that we like to talk about, like I said, the fun visuals that I really appreciate is landscape buffers. I know one of the things that commonly is addressed as part of a rezoning process is a concern over the separation of denser use types to the rural county area. The landscape buffers that we have proposed are a combination of perimeter buffers, your type A, B, and C perimeter buffers, and then streetscape buffers that tie to the DOT classification of the roadway. So not only would subdivisions be required to have perimeter buffers that match these standards based on a large table that you all have seen, there would also be a requirement for streetscape buffers that ensure that there is a visual separation between major subdivisions or commercial developments and the roadways, more so than what was previously in the ordinance, which was only tied to the parking lots of commercial developments. So this is something that you often see in other jurisdictions, where you're driving down the road, instead of seeing the backs of houses, you see a lovely buffer that provides that visual separation, as well as the safety separation between the roadway and the yards of those subdivision homes. Article 5 was a big one. That is talking about our subdivisions and infrastructure. There is a lot for us to go through that we're going to kind of touch on. And I'll rather than sit on this summary slide, I'll just jump into those as we go through. So one of the big things in lining up, or one of the wonderful conversations that we've actually been able to have through the steering committees was addressing some of the enhanced roadway standards for internal roads for major subdivisions. Some of those requirements we will address in other aspects, but this is really aligning these requirements for access points as far as entrances to subdivisions with the North Carolina Fire Code, as well as there's been extensive conversation, and this is something that we are still going through, in talking about roadway widths. While the steering committee recommended, in agreement with the Fire Marshal's Office and Emergency Services, to consider expanding the subdivision pavement width from 20 feet to 24 feet, at our joint meeting, I appreciate all of our discussion that we had on that. There was a vote to maintain that driveway or that access road width at 20 feet. So that's something we are still continuing to have conversations with, and something that we open the door in our conversations later with the people here of, within the development community, is there a concern over the extra costs? And is that something that is going to justify in the safety concerns that the fire marshal brought up? So we'll happy to have more discussion on that as we continue to go through. Wrong way. In the same vein, there was a lot of conversation with regard to the North Carolina Fire Code as far as cul-de-sacs and turnarounds. One of the common things that you see in subdivisions, because you're developing on open land and adjacent often to open land, is you find stub streets and turnarounds that have to, in most situations, meet the standards so that fire apparatuses have the ability to turn around. And there are a number of different ways that that can be addressed, whether that is through a cul-de-sac bulb or a number of different turnaround types that are shown there. And what we have concluded based off of the steering committee's recommendation is implementing some of those standards to match the fire code to ensure that the construction standards of those turnarounds and of those stub streets ensure the safety of Nash County residents. The other conversation that was had is restriction of access easements and standards for private roads. One of the things that is seen throughout Nash County and through my tenure as the senior planner was a allowance for a interesting subdivision type where you have roads that do not have direct road frontage, but are allotted the ability to subdivide onto a shared access easement, which ensures connectivity to the existing roadway, but it had some interesting carve-outs where it said it was restricted by the buildable, I guess, developable area. And with that restriction, where you see a previously approved subdivision that had 4 lots total, one being the corner lot at the street front on the bottom of the picture, what has been determined based on the safety concerns of the fire marshal's office and the communication with the steering committee is to decrease that allowance of 4 lots into 3 lots served by that access easement. So that still ensures that there is the development potential for these types of lots that are a part of Nash County as it stands right now, but ensuring that there's sufficient emergency vehicle access and to address those safety concerns. Another conversation we had was dealing with addressing block length. Obviously, Nash County is in no way going to jump down to the municipal size of block lengths where you might see a maximum of 600 feet in length. But currently, the maximum block length is 1,200 feet. And what has been proposed and approved by the steering committee was reducing that to 1,000 feet. That also led to conversation of that reduction for, again, fire suppression, fire service, and emergency service concerns to ensure that they are able to, from the intersection, fight fires at the very end of the cul-de-sac or the block, reducing the need across the board. As part of what we talked about with the landscape standards, you heard me talk about streetscape buffers, and part of that is the requirement to turn major subdivisions where they are accessed from the interior road network. And what we proposed and what was recommended was also adding a stem length requirement. That is a length from the existing roadway into the subdivision that would not be permitted to have driveways. And the reason for that is often a vehicle is traveling down what could be a 55-mile-an-hour road and turning into a subdivision and run into, but hopefully not, somebody backing out of the driveway. This stem length requirement allows for adequate time for people who are pulling into the subdivision to address the vehicle that may be in the right-of-way in front of them and slow down and prevent any kind of collision. The additional, as far as stub road requirements, we talk about access points, but the need to stub new subdivisions to vacant properties or undeveloped properties has become apparent. There's often situations where a developer is meeting the bare minimum at the block length of 1,200 feet and utilizing stub roads to address the block length requirement. This stub road requirement takes a measurement of the outside of the developable area of the property and says that every 1,000 feet, in line with the block length requirement, a stub road is required. That way, if a developer is coming in from to the adjacent property and developing, they have the ability and shall be required to connect to the adjacent stub roads. What this does is ensure that internal traffic, whether that be personal vehicles or emergency services, are not going out to the primary road and coming back into the next neighborhood. This allows that kind of cross-connection and connectivity of these neighborhoods. With regard to subdivision types, one of the things that was brought up was a question of conservation subdivisions. And the graphics you see in front of you are depictions of, larger lot, 40,000 square foot subdivisions, and how they spread out across the land, and the opportunity for a conservation subdivision to serve that same density, where you might have 100 units on 100 acres, but allow the developer to build less roads on smaller lots, or homes on smaller lots, down to an R6, 6,000 square foot lot minimum, while retaining the rest of the property for agricultural purposes, whether that be preservation of our stands of trees or to be utilized as active farm. This is something that was, again, heavily talked about. This is an opportunity to preserve the existing farms that we have while still allowing the development community to get the lots and numbers that they are looking for to make their projects make sense. As well, it is reducing the roads that are going through that neighborhood. It's reducing the need to extend utilities when you're getting down to R6 lot sizes, so that it becomes a more affordable option. And you are often finding more affordable homes in these types of subdivisions, while it also protects and preserves the agricultural land and allows the opportunity where you might have someone who is leasing that property for farming to still be able to maintain and use that in perpetuity and utilize the same Nash County allowances that they've had for all these years. We also talked about requirements for connecting to utilities. with a subdivision, a major subdivision threshold of 5 lots or more, the steering committee felt that that was a fair point or fair line to draw to say, if you were going to do a major subdivision, which requires homes to be on an interior road, which requires these landscape standards, which requires this, development cost, that connection to utilities should be tied in the same vein as that. But we didn't want to have a situation where it was just, if you were doing 6 lots, you had to go to the same length that somebody who was doing 500 lots. And I'm trying to find the standards off here quick. So what the standards that we proposed was actually saying that for every unit, it is a 100-foot length requirement to connect to utilities. So on a major subdivision of 5 lots, that would be 500 feet that they would have to connect to a water or sewer line in the area. But we don't want to have the situation where somebody is doing 500 lots, if there is that opportunity, and be forced to extend miles down the road. There is a point where it is no longer really feasible to extend those water lines, and so the need was to set a threshold of 3,000 feet. So that is a requirement that was agreed upon through our conversations with the steering committee. Additionally, there has been a number of conversations that have been had over the years, and I was engaged in some of those while I was working for the county, of concerns over private community water and wastewater systems. And while it has been determined by the attorney and by staff that we cannot restrict these outright, we can ensure that they have the standards that they meet and or exceed Nash County's utility systems, that they have they stub to a point which Nash County can then connect to them. So the opportunity to not only expand the county's water system as it grows out to these areas, it also ensures that there's it ensures that that connection is made to the standards of Nash County. That being said, there's also the allowance that these are only permitted when they are outside of that 3,000-foot distance from connection to utilities. So you wouldn't have a situation where a private developer would go and put a private utility system where there's already Nash County water or sewer. I like when we have some easy articles, because this was one that there wasn't any questions or concerns with the sign standards within Nash County. But what was needed was visuals, showing what the different sign types were, how they're measured, and that's what we did. We didn't change any of the standards. We didn't restrict any of the requirements. We just ensured that the visuals addressed what sign types Nash County had, and ensured the technical language as part of that was clear and concise. One of the things, like I talked about earlier, that was brought up early on in our joint meeting, our joint kickoff meeting, was a concern of flood safety. Obviously, Nash County has been hit, like many others, through hurricanes and flooding over the years. And there was a request to examine what other municipalities and counties have done to increase the freeboard requirements. And what we recommended, what the steering committee jointly recommended, was increasing the freeboard requirements from 1 foot to 2 foot, which is in line with what our neighbors do. This ensures that residential development that is within a flood zone has a little bit more of a safety net than was already there. And that's a valuable thing to have in an ordinance to ensure that you are addressing. Again, another article, administration, where we did not feel the need to dive in and modify. That section of the ordinance has been vetted for 20 some odd years, and We just wanted to make sure it was more clear and reformatted accordingly, and so we did not make any changes to that. The next article is your Article 9, Procedures. The goal of this is to provide a place for staff, for board members, for the public, to be able to open up and understand exactly how a development is to go through it's the standards and changes, or standards for development, whether that be part of a rezoning or part of a by right subdivision. And in that same vein, one of the conversations that was had is often the planning board right now has to, the applicant submits a major subdivision, staff and the TRC review those subdivisions. If it's recommended for approval, even if it's not recommended for approval by the TRC, they are then brought before the planning board, who acts as an administrative approval, but has been left with the caveat of having to juggle concerns from neighbors and what they can and can't forcibly require. They've requested additional landscape buffers, they've requested other things, and often the developer has been amenable to those standards. We hope that with the increased standards for landscaping and separation and connectivity that we've provided within the ordinance, that those standards have been addressed, and those by right subdivisions, by our recommendation and the steering committee's recommendation, would no longer be going to the planning board for that administrative approval, but instead would be going just to the TRC, who is comprised not only of planning staff, but utilities, fire, NCDOT, environmental health, all of those people that ensure that those by right subdivisions meet the standards or exceed the standards of Nash County. Furthermore, with this procedures section, we have made a point to include more detail and ensure that what is being addressed and is clearly shown. We have been working on creating more clean flow charts, although there are some within an appendix of the current ordinance. They could absolutely be improved so that the community can understand how things have to go through the planning process. I will jump back on one thing and ensure that when I'm talking about by right subdivisions, I'm only talking about subdivisions that are within a zoning that permits their lot size. If there's ever a situation where a developer is interested in rezoning that property or getting smaller lots, they still would have to go through TRC, Planning Board, and to you all, the commissioners, before they seek approval or denial from that rezoning. So that has not changed. It's only those situations where if it's an R40 or an A1 and they're proposing 40,000 square foot lots and it meets all the standards of the ordinance, staff has the ability from an administrative standpoint to approve those and it not be required by the planning board to seek those administrative approvals. I got ahead of myself. And that's what I was talking about with the by right subdivisions. I apologize, I'm getting ahead of myself on that one a little bit. Finally, definitions. This is something that we notice again. It's the situation where currently there are multiple definition sections throughout the ordinance, whether that be part of the overall zoning standards, whether that be the environmental standards. And the goal is to bring those all into one place. So staff is not having to flip through 300 some odd pages of the ordinance to find a standard or find a definition. And the only definition that we sought change in was the revision of the definition for major and minor subdivisions. And I keyed in on that briefly a few minutes ago, where minor subdivisions are defined as 4 or fewer lots, and major subdivisions, which would have to follow the standards that we've talked about throughout this process, are 5 or more lots. So you see that kind of going hand in hand with the requirements for utilities, requirements for all those landscape standards and street stubs and all that. So it's ensuring that all that kind of matches as we go through. With that being said, I want to thank, I know we're not done, and I know I'm going to talk more tonight, and I know we still have more to go through, but I cannot step away from this podium without thanking all of you, all of the planning board that is here in attendance and has been part of this process, and honestly, thank all of you. This is an unexpectedly large crowd, and I understand why. Development is a concern in Nash County, and I am happy that so many people are engaged and involved, and I hope they're paying attention to everything that's gone on with these processes. And as we continue to publish articles and the UDO as a draft form, once it's finally reviewed by staff and we agree upon some of these things tonight, that they take the time to read through that, ask questions, continue to be involved in this process, because we all know development occurs no matter what. There's no way to stop it. And what we've been trying to do through the UDO update, through this whole year-long process so far, is ensure that the concerns of the community, the concerns of the board and planning board are addressed, and that it eases some of your processes. It eases some of your pain in dealing with this, and hopefully eases some of the concerns of the citizens of Nash County. So I really appreciate all the time you have spent and listened to me through all this. And if that being said, I think I'm going to turn it over to Tyson to introduce the public comment section.
Okay, I want to thank Mr. Culpepper, and I want us to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to have the public participate, ask questions, and Mr. Tyson will lead that off with our guidelines. Let's take a short break, and we'll be back here at 7 o'clock, 7:01. All right, thank you, Adam. You can get started with the guidelines.
Thank you. We're going to proceed to the main purpose of tonight's meeting, which is to give the public and the local development community an opportunity to comment on the list of proposed changes. We do have a few guidelines I've been asked to share for tonight's discussion. Members of the public are invited to come up to this podium one at a time and ask questions or share comments regarding the proposed UDO updates. It's not a requirement, but if you are able to identify the numbers on your handout that you might have questions or comments about, that will help Mr. Culpepper and I track, what topics you're talking about. Individual speakers are asked to speak only once during tonight's meeting and to limit their comments or questions to no more than 5 minutes. Our county attorney, who's at the end of the table to the audience's right here, will be keeping time, and he'll let the speaker know when they have 1 minute left. To avoid repetition, if you're here with a group that shares the same position, you are encouraged to designate a spokesperson to speak on that group's behalf, just to respect everybody's time. Any speaker's comments can also be supplemented with any written statements or petitions that you might want to provide to county staff during the meeting for the record, and you can just hand those up to these 2 staff tables or pass them up. The planning consultant, Mr. Culpepper, and myself will do our best to respond to the questions and comments. Public comments should not be directed to the board or to any individual member of the board during the meeting. I would say that some of these proposals are still just that, proposals. They have not been fully fleshed out into ordinance language. So in the event we don't have an answer to your question, we are certainly interested in your suggestions or your comments, because you may have been able to come at this thing from a different angle than we have, and we'll all be better off if we have more perspectives on what we're trying to do here. Finally, the board members themselves are welcome to ask questions or make comments as they choose to, but they're encouraged to direct those comments to the planning consultant and/or the county staff. One thing I want to remind you is that this is your first opportunity, but it is not your only or final opportunity to speak to the county publicly and to the elected officials about this. This is the beginning of our dialogue with the public, but it is not the end. And so with that, I will open the floor to whoever wants to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Okay, who would like to come forward? Just come forward and state your name. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right.
My name is Stephanie Pitts, and I live on West Orange Church Road in Bailey. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And most of my comments are just positive comments about the proposed revisions. I think that those revisions are very thoughtful and make huge strides in promoting smarter growth in Nash County. So I'm just going to go through a few things that I noted that I really liked in the revisions. So from the first one would be requiring the planting of canopy trees along new interior roads of new major subdivisions. I think that's wonderful to preserve the rural nature of Nash County and continue to ensure it is a pleasant place to live. I especially like the definition of major subdivisions as anything with 5 or more lots. The second point that I really appreciated was requiring the installation of mandatory vegetative landscape screening buffers around new major subdivision residential developments. So I just thought that was great. However, I would be in favor of berms for all residential developments, not just those that are adjacent to property that is zoned for less dense or less intensive development. I think berms and buffers are very nice. The third thing that I would like to point out that is positive is the requiring the construction of sidewalks along at least one side of interior roads for multifamily townhome developments and within conservation subdivisions. I thought that was a wonderful revision. However, I would be in favor of sidewalks in all new residential developments. I'm also in favor of the wider roads that are proposed. I think that's really important for emergency vehicles, safety, et cetera. The fourth point that I really liked was revise major subdivision road connectivity standards to require construction of one stub road. And there's, requirements. I wasn't entirely sure about what that was about. I figured it was connectivity and being able to connect neighborhoods, and Mr. Culpepper clarified that. So I think that's wonderful. All these improvements really help reduce the visual impacts of development, protect neighboring properties, improve stormwater management, it sounds like, and I also like the connection to the water resources, and it seems like the effort is to create safer and more connected communities. I didn't see as much in the revisions about preserving farmland. I understand the conservation districts are supposed to do that, but I really think that we need to direct growth toward areas that can be developed without unnecessarily converting productive agricultural land to development. Another thing that I just wondered, and maybe I guess this is my question, is these are new policies and ordinances. Is there the opportunity for the county to be flexible? Like, is there an overarching statement in the ordinance that basically says, here are some guiding principles that we try to go through and address, and then if we notice that some of these policies or ordinances are creating things that are not desirable, like shared driveways or whatever, is there an opportunity to be more flexible in the way that those are implemented in the future? And I guess I'm done, except for I'd like to say in summary, all new developments should include canopy trees, sidewalks, open space, and berms to promote residential longevity and improve public health and safety. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much.
So
Anytime that Adam and Adam want to answer one of the questions, please do so.
Let me just quickly address, in terms of farmland preservation, our Soil and Water Conservation Department is launching a separate project from the UDO but it's a farmland preservation plan and ultimately a farmland preservation program. And so there will be more revealed about that in coming days. But you're correct that the main push for that within the UDO is the conservation subdivision, but I don't want to leave you with the impression that that's the only thing the county's going to do. And when you talked about flexibility and guiding principles, I guess really where the guiding principles live is not in the nuts and bolts of the UDO development regulations, but rather in our county's land use plan. But you make a good point that if these regulations don't necessarily result in the type of development that we're looking for, it's always important to remember that this is a living document that the Board of Commissioners can amend, anytime they need to. And so we are trying some new things with this ordinance. And if not all of those new things pan out the way we are expecting, there's always a possibility that we can back up and amend and come at it from a different angle. So in that sense, the document is flexible, but it will involve the county paying attention to the results that we get and then making a judgment call about whether that is what we wanted, or do we need to massage the language or add some additional restrictions, whatever we need to do to get to the product that we want.
Okay, next speaker, anybody? Who's next? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Blair Alford, and I work for Joyner Kenney Surveying and Engineering. I just got a couple of questions. Number 22, that's talking about the 45-foot wide private easement to permit subdivision of 3 lots. I mean, looking at the drawing that was showed on the intro, that pretty much was like a flag lot. So on one side, you're saying we're not going to do flag lots, but if I had the piece of property and I just put a 45-foot easement, and I only want to do 1 lot, would that be permitted? Just a question for you guys. The second one is number 23, the maximum block length to 1,000 feet. I just got a kind of a question, why would we want to build more roads for DOT to maintain if we turn them over to DOT, that is? And then the other thing is the county working on any type of investigation, or so to speak, for fire suppression, since the Nash County water system wasn't really built for fire suppression, it's more built for consumption. And that's all I have right there.
All right.
Stay right there, Blair. So I think and I've had this conversation with several people, I think that in moving away from allowing footlots, the flexibility we'll lose there will be made up in us loosening the requirements for access easements. So to your question, yes, as long as you have the land to meet the minimum lot size, if you want to put a single residential lot, say in the big middle of a large farm field, and you want to put that on a 45-foot easement, you will be able to do that if this is adopted as proposed without having to jump through the hoops of limited development potential that have been, in the ordinance for so long. And in fact, you can do 1 corner lot that is on the main road and then up to 2 interior lots that are served by the easement that don't touch the main road. You asked a question about maximum block length and why we would shorten that. I think that the purpose behind that is when you think about like maybe a subdivision that's just 1 road and a cul-de-sac, there is some concern where we don't have fire suppression about the fire department being able to make it all the way to the end of that road. Also, when you shorten the block length, you basically force the developer to be a little more creative in having cross connections and to provide, a little bit more of a road network. You make a great point that the county is not in the business of road building or road maintenance, and so everything that we do does have to be done with an eye toward NCDOT eligibility, because every road that the county approves has to be either privately maintained by the homeowners that are served by it or publicly maintained by the DOT, because there is no county road department. In terms of the water system and future expansions, can you address that at all, or?
Other than to say that that's a conversation that's come up during the rewrite on the UDO, and we will be evaluating that moving forward. We certainly have fire suppression across the county system where the mains are large enough to support a fire hydrant, and the flow is there. But there are smaller mains that will not support fire hydrants, and that's going to be something we need to evaluate moving forward, just what the implications are for the cost, both for the county and for the development community.
Right, and the only reason I ask that is because I know we haven't been made to put fire hydrants in our subdivisions that we're doing. And that's why I'm kind of, and I know a lot of the communities, they propose that comment every time we come to the planning board or commissioners meeting. So I just want to make sure that the county's kind of moving in both directions to help that.
Well, and the other thing to point out is that that would not be a requirement that will be addressed within the UDO, like will be addressed through our utility requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Chad Bissett. I'm an Assistant Chief with the Bailey Fire Department. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Bailey Fire Department as well as other departments in Nash County regarding subdivision roadway widths and water infrastructure in Nash County. The fire service strongly supports a minimum subdivision roadway width of 24 feet, particularly in developments that do not have access to adequate fire hydrant systems. This recommendation is not arbitrary. It's based on real operational challenges, firefighter safety concerns, and nationally recognized standards. NFPA 1142, the standard on water supplies for suburban and rural firefighting, recommends a minimum clear width of 12 feet for each lane of travel when adequate water supply is not available. A typical fire apparatus measures approximately 110 to 120 inches from mirror to mirror, nearly 9 to 10 feet wide. When responding to a fire in an area without hydrants, we must establish a water shuttle operation. This requires the use of portable dump tanks that can range from 10 to 13 feet in width. These tanks are positioned beside or in front of the attack pumper and allow tanker trucks to offload water and then use for fire suppression. If you look at the illustration, I'm sorry. Right here is a typical water shuttle of a dump tank operation. This fire truck would be positioned at the structure fire. As you can see, we have portable dump tanks that would be either in front or on the side of the attack pumper. The fire tanker, the tanker truck would actually dump water into these pools for water that's readily available on site and then proceed on. And as you can see, this is a 20-foot roadway width. The fire truck is approximately 2 foot off of the road. And when we're talking about 20 foot, we're talking about from pavement to pavement. And as you can see, this is pretty limited in our ability to get around. So we're asking for 24 feet. This is a new subdivision in Wilson County, which is actually 24 feet. And obviously we didn't have fire trucks here that could set up, but as you can see, it gets pretty tight. When parked vehicles, basketball goals, trash cans, mailboxes, and other common roadside obstructions are added to the equation, it becomes clear how quickly a 20-foot wide roadway can become congested and unsafe. These narrow streets create challenges not only for the first arriving fire apparatus, but also for the tanker trucks that must continuously move in and out of the subdivision to shuttle water from field site to fire scene. Every delay impacts our ability to deliver water to a structure fire, and every restriction in access increases the risk to both firefighters and the citizens we serve. From a financial standpoint, during the May 27th joint meeting of the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners, it was stated that a 24-foot wide roads were not economically feasible, and I respectfully disagree. To better understand the potential cost impact, I contacted several paving companies and conducted independent research. Based on the information obtained, the average cost of paving ranges from approximately $4 to $7 per square feet. The minimum average lot frontage is approximately 100 feet.
You have 1 minute left.
In many cases, the additional 4 feet of roadway width would be shared between 2 homes, one on each side of the street. As a result, each home would effectively be responsible for approximately 200 square feet of additional pavement. At the high end of the estimated cost range, 200 square feet multiplied by $7 per square feet equals approximately $1,400 per home. For a $300,000 home, that represents an increase of less than 0.5%, approximately 0.47%. In other words, for less than 0.5% increase in costs, future residents would receive improved emergency access, enhanced public safety, and better operating conditions for fire, EMS, and law enforcement personnel. Many of these challenges could also be reduced through our properly designed countywide water system that provides both reliable domestic water service and adequate fire protection. More than 20 years ago, Bailey Fire Department raised concerns during these discussions regarding the county water system. At that time, many of the proposed service lines consisting of 4-inch water mains.
That's time.
All right, thank you.
Just want to remind the speakers that they have written comments, they can leave those with us if they were unable to finish their comments.
All right, good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening. Hey, my name is Sarah Thompson. I live in the Oak Level community. I'm currently part of the residents that do not have access to county water. So far, I've been told there wouldn't be no plans to have access to county water in my area. Therefore, I'm on a well. There's a lot of us in the area that are also on a well, both in subdivisions and houses that have been there for a lot longer. Right now, we have subdivision going in across the road from me. There are 2 more planned on Oak Level Road, all of which are going to be operating off of new wells. I'm not sure what's being done to protect us and to ensure our water supply stays, because no one can answer my questions about what you're doing to protect it when you continue to allow new subdivisions to come in without any supply of water other than the wells. Obviously, we know that's not a unlimited supply, and I'm not seeing what's being done to protect the people that are already there and the people that plan to move into there. I don't see where large subdivisions are appropriate in an area that cannot support an unlimited amount of people based off of the infrastructure. Also, as the fire chief was just stating, we don't have access to fire hydrants in the area either, and when you're putting a lot of homes close together, that increases your chance of fires spreading between houses. And when you do not have a water supply other than the water tanker trucks coming in to help that, you're increasing our risk of losing our homes off of somebody else's accidents, carelessness, or electrical problems coming up. So I would just like some thought being put into those of us that are still operating off of wells and what's being done to protect us, and what is the limit on the new amount of wells that are going to be dug for all these new subdivisions that are coming into these areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Chris Joyner, 4774 Baker Road. I'm the chief of Nashville Fire Department. I'm a volunteer at Cooper's Fire Department, and I am the president of the Nash County Fire Association. One thing that I wanted to follow up on the chief that he did not get to, this is a fact. This is from the U.S. Fire Administration and National Fire Protection Association. At least 35 roadside emergency responders, including firefighters, were struck and killed by passenger vehicles in the United States in 2025. Historical data shows that about 8 to 20% of all firefighter line of duty crashes, deaths, or crash-related fatalities each year are due to being struck by vehicles outside their apparatus. Working in these subdivisions, we're on these 20-foot roads, You can't move around there, especially when you've got a fire truck that's 9.5 foot wide, then you put the 13-foot dump tank out in front of it. There's no room to work in there. So that is the reason why we are so much, there's 6 departments out here tonight that we're representing, and I'm representing the county fire departments, that we need these 24-foot roads. I do understand the cost, I understand that we want development, but we do need to look after the safety of the people and also the residents. So, thank y'all.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Bradley Hugoworth. I live off of Old Smithfield down near Bailey. I want to just express that to many of us who live out in the country where I am, Nash County is a rural county. It's full of farms and pine forests and those country roads that we love to drive by. And we who live in the country, we like it that way and we want it to stay that way. Several members of the steering committee and of this body have expressed that they've heard the people in Nash County. They intend to accommodate our wishes. And so to that effect, I would like to thank the board and the steering committee and the consultants at Withers Ravenel for this work that y'all are doing. I know it's thankless and tedious work, but it's very important because for those of us who want to preserve the rural nature of Nash County, this is a big opportunity to make some very effective changes. And so there are some very good things in this UDO update, all the reorganization, all the cleanup of things that are maybe out of order. There's the increased setbacks on the high traffic roads. There's addressing data centers and putting some restrictions on them. And this is the idea of conservation subdivisions. All those are very good things. However, there are several items in this list of changes that are concerning to me. And the first and foremost of that is that with the by right subdivisions, there would not be, in my understanding, any required environmental impact assessments for these new subdivisions. That would not be mandated for a by right subdivision. And to me, that's unacceptable because we know that these developments have an impact on the environment around them, and particularly with the water table. Wells have been mentioned. What hasn't been mentioned is that last year we had flooding near Spring Hope, and there were 2 people who sadly passed away in that flooding. And the mayor of Spring Hope, Kyle Pritchard, came and spoke to this body and testified that it was at least in part due to the new subdivisions that increased the amount of water in those creeks and increased the amount of water flow that was sweeping that car away. We also have the fact that these by right subdivisions would not have to meet approval anymore with the planning board. And to me, it reduces the public's ability to provide feedback on upcoming developments. And really, it can only have one purpose, which is to push through more new subdevelopments with less oversight at a faster pace. If our main priority is preserving the rural character of Nash County, that is not a requirement that will advance that goal. And then there is this conservation subdivision. Again, a great idea, and it's been utilized in many, many other counties to great effect. But as it's currently laid out, in my opinion, it has a few fatal flaws. The first, the most glaring, is that it is only voluntary. So a subdivider could come in and they could do a R40 subdivision the normal way, or they could choose the conservation subdivision. And I just think that we should not, as a county, make conservation of our rural character optional. We should make that mandatory. And also, the conservation subdivision, as this is written, it actually enables more lots to be put on the same amount of land. Compared to the R40 zoning, when you go to R6 lots, it's at least 50% more lots in the same amount of area. And now, we have that R6 lot, and that also is a problem, because when you have a R6 lot that's 6,000 square feet, where are you going to put your septic fields? You can't have septic on an R6 lot. You need an R20 lot at minimum. And presumably, this conservation subdivision is meant to go into the country where we're trying to preserve the country nature, but it can't be used out there because there's no sewers out there. These R6 lots would have to connect the sewer. So I would like that to be addressed by this board. There are a number of other things that I could say, but I would like to make a particular proposal which would help greatly to preserve our rural nature, and that is to set a total yearly cap on the total number of lots that can be developed in any year. You can exempt very small subdivisions like 1 or 2 or 3 lots, but as a whole, I would propose that if we want to grow at a manageable rate, cap it at 200 new lots, total subdivisions for all in Nash County every year, and that's about a 1% rate of growth. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a few follow-ups on that. One thing I did want to point out is a by right subdivision is not a new concept. That is something we currently have. That means that you're developing a subdivision without asking to change the zoning. So you're going to abide by all the rules that are already in place. Right now, those have to go to the planning board, but when they go to the planning board is not allowed to legally base their decision on whether or not they think that development is a good idea. They have to legally base their decision on whether the development proposal is meeting the minimum standards of the ordinance. And so in our discussions, we've determined that it really puts the planning board in an awkward position where they may not be as versed in the minimum requirements as the staff does, but they're being asked to make a decision, but not to apply their own preferences or opinions, which is different from when they're asked to advise on a rezoning. And so that is the logic behind changing by right subdivisions from being reviewed by the planning board to being reviewed by the TRC. It does not change any of the minimum requirements that the developer has to meet. Also, the gentleman mentioned environmental impact assessments. That is something that was discussed by our steering committee. The steering committee ultimately felt that because of the way environmental regulation is set up in the state of North Carolina, the state is charged with environmental regulation, whereas the local town or county is charged with regulating the development rules. And so even though environmental impact assessments, they've never been required by Nash County, they were discussed, but ultimately the steering committee did not bring those forward as a recommendation. And the gentleman also made a very good point about conservation subdivisions. Although a developer would have the flexibility of having lots as small as 6,000 square feet, that would only be practical in situations where sewer is available, or there's a more innovative solution where you can have an on-site wastewater treatment plant, which is part of what we're talking about, making sure that if somebody uses that they have to meet our local county construction specifications so that there could potentially be interconnection when our sewer system or water system grows toward that area. But having those 6,000 square foot lots is really not an option unless there's sewer or the developer is willing to invest in that innovative on-site treatment solution. And as he said, with septic systems, 20,000 square foot lots is really about as small as you're going to be able to practically get in that development.
All right, thank you. Next speaker. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Karen Hendricks. I live on Robertson Road outside of Spring Hope. The first thing I would like to say is, wouldn't it make sense for the board to consider not adopting these changes until after the change in membership following the election? I just want to throw that out there. In item number 12 in this about the data center, why do we even have to consider it? Why not just say Nash County is not going to allow data centers? Item number 14, is there any plan to address maintenance of landscaping? They can put it up, but it could die. This year, it would have died. Items 20 and 21. It makes a whole lot of sense to me to talk to the people who actually use this equipment that we've talked about tonight, listen to what the fire departments have got to say. Also, have you all talked to the school system about buses in the cul-de-sacs having to turn? I know that has been an issue in the past. Item number 28. I have a question about this. If you have a developer who wants to come in and use this conservation by right, can they use wasteland or wetlands as part of that conservation land? And what have they really done as far as conservation, if they are allowed to do that? And this is really my big thing about everything that's going on in the county right now with the development is water. Is it the goal of the county to have county-wide water? Is it the goal of the county to go into the wastewater treatment? It seems from reading this that the goal is definitely to start going towards county water. That's expensive. The upkeep of that is expensive. Ask the town of Spring Hope. Ask the town of Zebulon. They just had a major water break this past week. My mama used to say, you start out like you can hold out. So you've got to think about long-term, because I think some of the infrastructure in Spring Hope is almost 100 years old, definitely 60 or 70 years old. I would ask you to maybe it's time for the county to stop and say, look, maybe we need to take a breath here and see how much infrastructure we can actually support and what can the taxpayers support. Because eventually, the taxpayers are the one, not eventually, but always, the taxpayers are the ones that are paying for it, whether you got grant money to support it, or whether you're paying for it out of the county coffers. It all came out of our pockets. And Mr. Tyson stated earlier to remember that this is not something that is etched in stone and it's able to be changed. And I would say, from my experience, when it gets changed, it's because you got a problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple follow-ups on that. One question she asked is, why are we even considering data centers? And that also has to do with the way development law works in North Carolina. I don't believe that we can legally exclude a land use under any circumstances. And I think that's why you're seeing across the state jurisdictions adopt these temporary moratoria on data centers. But in the law, that can only be a temporary state. Ultimately, every jurisdiction is going to have to grapple with what conditions they're going to allow data centers and what review processes. And that doesn't mean that they have to ultimately approve them, but they are going to have a development ordinance that addresses it. And so I think we're getting ahead of that. The thing we also don't want is for someone to come in an ordinance that doesn't specifically spell out data centers and make an argument that it is similar to some other land use that is in the permitted use table, and then have a judge agree with that. And now Nash County might be forced to permit a data center that it didn't want because a judge agrees that it's close enough to another land use that we do allow. And so just turning our backs on it altogether is really not a long-term strategy based on the way land development law works in North Carolina. But I would not say by any means that what we're proposing is any kind of embrace of data centers, because as I stated at the beginning, the feedback we've received from the officials is to continue to strengthen and make the restrictions stricter as we look at those conditions. You asked about the maintenance of landscaping that's going to be required around new development. That is something that the steering committee discussed, and I believe we discussed adopting language that would make the original developer responsible for the maintenance and survival of that landscaping for 2 years. 2 years? It was either 1 year or 2 year, 2 years, I think, because we want to make sure that, as she said, does not, die immediately, that it gets established and survives through the changing of the seasons to the point where we feel like it is likely to carry on from that point. You also made a very good point about the conservation area in a conservation subdivision, and what happens if that is wetlands or riparian buffers, or essentially an area that couldn't be used for development anyway. And that is what we found happened a lot in our cluster subdivision development option. And for that reason, the board repealed it, because we were not happy with the results we were getting. But this conservation subdivision model will allow some of that wetland or riparian area to be included in the conservation area, but I believe it's capped at 20%. And so while that area, we want that area to remain untouched, and it can be a part of the conservation easement area, but 80% of that has to be outside of any riparian buffer wetland, or something that would have been essentially useless to the developer anyway, meaning that we're really putting a cost on the developer to be able to do this, and that cost is the preservation of that land. And they will not be able to, like we had under the cluster, to make it all useless land, or to even make the majority of it useless land. So I wanted everybody to know that we are thinking about and addressing that.
All right. Thank you. Next presenter. Good
My
evening.
name is Donald Hillhorst. I'm a land surveyor in Nashville, and also I'm a resident at 2645 Racus Store Road. One question, I didn't see nothing addressed on the flooding. They're going to raise the freeboard a foot. Raising the freeboard a foot doesn't protect anybody from flooding other than the new construction. The people that are back at the foot, and they're getting these new subdivisions in here, and that water is going to go into our streamlines. And was there any research done into water retention on, if you have a 500-foot lot subdivision, that there's some kind of, that would slow the water down to a certain extent? But because it's going into Stony Creek, and if we all remember what happened to Hurricane Floyd, and Bunn Farm got flooded. Now, the subdivisions that are pouring more water into Stony Creek over there, the people now that are at the 1-foot freeboard, and that water keeps on coming there because 95 created the dam until it went over there. The culvert, bridge, whatever goes underneath 95, it held that water back. And same with people with there's probably a lot of concern for people that are in the rural areas and increased, because we noticed that just like First Street Extension, how many times that I've seen the water go over that little road back over there, and that's because of development. And I'm just kind of, whether the board and the planning department, Adam, if you looked into address this in part of your studies. But thank you.
All right, thank you.
So Nash County, what he's talking about is stormwater management. And Nash County enforces the state-set stormwater ordinance requirements, and those requirements are focused around the amount of impervious surface, basically land where the rain does not soak into the ground. It either runs off a rooftop or asphalt or a parking lot, pavement. It gathers speed while it's doing that, and it collects nutrients in the soil that can then be washed into our drinking water supply. The other concern is dealing with the volume of that water and making sure that the water that runs off the rooftops and the roads of a particular subdivision is not just diverted onto the next property. And at a certain threshold, you are triggered by the state requirements that we enforce to build in stormwater control measures that do both of those things, to protect the quality of the drinking water as well as to control the volume in a storm-type situation. Now, that is not to say that those regulations are going to prevent any sort of flash flooding that we'll have, but we will continue to be enforcing those stormwater managements on both non-residential and residential development as we're mandated to do by the state.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Good evening.
Good afternoon, good night. I'm Cecil Williams. I live at 6765 Jordan Road, Elm City. And I'm trying to get some clarification on the multiple ways in and out of a subdivision. I'm involved in a situation possibly where I have say a 300-acre farm, and I want to develop it. The farm's on a high ground, good land, perks well, but I have a creek on both sides of the farm that go around it and come into a peak. And I don't have but maybe 1,000 feet of actual road frontage. And there's a lot of farms in Nash County that has this same situation. Very rarely do you find a farm that has two roads, a road frontage road here and a road frontage to the side, either both sides or whatever. Most of them are road frontage on one road. And I understand that we take a measurement from one corner and go perpendicular down to the far corner and get that measurement, which could be, say, 3,000 feet. And they're saying, and I understand the ordinance is saying if I want to put in over, maybe it's 100 lots, then I have to go beyond the halfway point on that farm, on that line, the perpendicular line, and I have to come out and have another access point east or west if I think it's north and south. I can understand that if you own the roads that have the capability to do that, but I don't understand why you would be forced to do that on a road and on a farm situation where that you don't have that opportunity, and penalize that person to sell that farmland that they work for and sell it to get the money to do other things with. Why are they being penalized because of new regulations? You got anything on that?
Yeah, you're correct that the new proposal would be to require 2 points of access onto the main road for a subdivision that exceeds 100 lots. That is not something that we pulled out of thin air. It's something that has lived in North Carolina's Fire Prevention Code appendices, but just has not been enforced in Nash County. But what this reminds me of is Ms. Pitt's previous comment about flexibility. There is always going to be the possibility where you have a unique situation and a unique piece of property that might be worthy of being allowed to deviate from the standard rules. In the new ordinance, what those situations would call for is a variance request. And a variance request would go before the Board of Adjustment, and the developer in this case would be responsible for demonstrating to that board that having to follow the regular rules would be a hardship, that hardship is related to the nature of the property. So like when you were talking about the location of the streams on that particular property, the hardship can't just be that it would be too expensive to meet the regular rules or that the developer doesn't want to, but if there are physical characteristics about the property, then that might meet that criteria. It can't pose, a threat to anyone else's property or, their safety, and you need to make a good faith attempt to meet the intent of the ordinance. But if you can demonstrate to the Board of Adjustment that your particular property meets that criteria, then that would be worthy of a variance, which would be permission to deviate from a requirement, in this case, the requirement for 2 entrances, but it would have to be specifically based on the site, and it would have to be decided on a case-by-case basis. But there is a release valve, if you will, for situations where the unique qualities of a particular property don't necessarily lend themselves to the standard ordinance requirements. But you would have to go through that variance process to see if our Board of Adjustment agrees with your assessment. But there would be a way to navigate that potentially.
Yes, sir. And I know this, I'm originally a farmer. And I know there's a lot of farms in Nash County that's going to come up with this problem. And and the point that you got to go halfway the distance of the diagonal line, and there's an artificial line that you got to have your path or your access beyond that is sort of technical on me. But anyway, I know I don't have a lot of time remaining yet. The 24-foot roads, I understand it was, I thought it was the steering committee might have voted for it, and it was a consensus vote at the commissioners to deny it. But if we're going to go all the way to a 24-foot road, and you're going to require sidewalks, why don't just say we got to have curb and gutter too? Just go all the way, just go. And then you go and do it all, and then it's not going to matter to me as a developer, because we're going to pass the cost on to the builders, they're going to pass it on to the homeowners. But what you are going to do is you're going to have no lots that are going to be affordable for residents of Nash County to buy, because the cost has been increased so dramatically that outsiders are going to come in and can buy lots and buy houses, but local citizens are going to be completely barred from participating and raising their family in Nash County where they want to, because of the cost has been increased to the point they can't afford it by the commissioners. That's part of my, and my last final thing is, the fire code has not even been adopted. The fire code says it may happen in '26. They're hoping it's going to happen in '26. Why are we discussing and trying to put Nash County under requirements of a fire code that's not even been adopted by North Carolina yet? It's my position, and I would hope that this board would delay actions on this until the fire code is enforced or is approved, or the new board is sworn in for the commissioners. I think we're in too big of a hurry to get something done, and there's too many flaws and too many things that needs to be fixed, and we don't have time to fix them. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just one point of clarification there. The current proposal for sidewalks does not include traditional single-family developments. Sidewalks are only proposed in multifamily or conservation subdivisions.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jane Flowers Finch from Raleigh, but I'm a native of Bailey. Grew up here and own property in Nash County. I've got several things I want to cover, so I want to do, I'd love to see Nash County stay a farmland and all that, but I've spoken to y'all before, and I realize the key is management and control and having it done right. We've got to be sure the development is done right. But I am concerned about our future with regard to water. I think I've told y'all on occasion during COVID, my mother had 5 houses and the wells went dry down on 264 east of Bailey, and there's no county water out there. And we paid a substantial sum to get a 600-foot well dug quick. And I recently had another well down off 264 to go, it got dry, but we got recovered from that. And it's thought that those problems may be coming because the rock quarry was just a mile or two down the road, and when they dig those holes at the rock quarry, the aquifers drain into those holes, and that's what the well diggers have told us is contributing to the problem. And there's some businesses out there that have been concerned about that because they're trying to expand the rock quarry. But I mean, I think the county may need to think about putting some water out there, but I think long-term, water can be a problem. And I don't know, the city of Wilson had the foresight 50-some years ago to put the Buckhorn Reservoir out there, and I don't know what kind of plans y'all have, but I just recently heard the manager for the city of Wilson or county talk about, with all the shortage of water, Wilson was in really good shape. And my mother had a farm over there, and the city of Wilson condemned and took over half her farm back in the 70s for that reservoir. But I think we need to have the foresight to start thinking water is a very serious concern with all this development, and especially these developments where they're going to go dig wells. And if you're digging wells all next door to each other, can those aquifers supply? And actually, there's been some people on Lyles Road that had their wells dry up in the last few years too. And there's county water out there, and they tapped into it. I think putting in sidewalks on roads is critical. For safety. I've seen children getting off school bus on Stony Hill Church Road where there's no sidewalk out there, and the bus will drop about 8 or 10 children off, and sidewalks are critical for safety. And also, there's been a problem with people out in these rural subdivisions. They're trespassing the property of the adjacent farmland, and they need to have some open spaces on their subdivision, some park areas, so that they are there. The farmland and adjacent forestry is not the county park available for everybody. And then one thing that's got me the greatest concern in Nash County is affordable housing, which is a major problem in all your rural areas, and it's a real problem in Nash County. My mother had some rental property that my niece and nephew and I have inherited. I bet I get 8 calls a week, people looking for housing. And these houses that Cecil Williams has bid out on Stony Hill Church Road, that's not affordable housing. And my son-in-law is a developer, and he and I have talked about it extensively. And you know, the only way we're going to be able to do it is mobile homes. It's the only affordable way. And the county has been against it because my mama tried to add some years ago, and it was too hard. She had some. And I've been observing some mobile home parks in Wilson and places where they're done right. But we do have a problem with affordable housing. And you can't build a stick build like Mr. Williams' build and rent it in a price point that people can afford. People are struggling to pay their rent. They're having a hard time, and we need affordable housing in Nash County, and that is, we have to factor that into what is allowed. And if you look at the numbers and run the numbers, either these very tiny houses or mobile homes would be the only way you could put something in new and have it in a price point that that a large segment of the people are needing. Let's see. Roads, water, roads, pedestrians. And I assume on these this whole process, on anything, there can be variances. The boards would have authority, the planning board and the county commissioners.
Board of Adjustment would have variance authority.
Yeah, okay. But that's all. Thank y'all very much.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Amy Pearson. I'm a business owner and community volunteer, concerned citizen of Nash County. First, I want to thank the planning department, the consultants, the staff, and commissioners for the significant amount of work that has gone into updating our Unified Development Ordinance. It has been many years since we have undertaken a comprehensive review, and there are many portions of this document that bring our county standards into today's environment. Growth has changed, development has changed, and regulations must evolve as well. While I believe the UDO is moving in the right direction, I do not believe that the work is finished. Outside consultants bring valuable experience and perspective, but Nash County is unique. What works in one county doesn't necessarily work in another. One size does not fit all. There are still important questions and concerns being raised by citizens that deserve additional consideration before this process is complete. My first concern is public safety. As subdivisions continue to be developed, we should require those 24-foot wide roads or the installation of fire hydrants, one of the two. Fire trucks are larger than ever. When vehicles are parked along narrow streets, emergency access becomes difficult. In many situations, water supply is just as important as the access. We should not wait until after a tragedy to realize we should have required better infrastructure from the beginning. My second concern is data centers. This is an emergent issue that many communities are facing. Nash County is currently under mandatory water restrictions right now. Data centers can consume tremendous amounts of water and other resources. Before we open the door to that type of development, we should have clear regulations in place that protect our residents, our water supply, and our future needs. I am also concerned about the possibility of allowing residential lots of small as 6,000 square foot in our county areas. Higher density development may be appropriate within municipalities where water, sewer, emergency services, and infrastructure are already concentrated. Rural Nash County is different. Our county character and infrastructure were not built around this level of density. I am very worried about what unchecked subdivision growth is doing to our rural character of Nash County. Many of us live here because of the open spaces, farmland, tree lines, and scenic country roads that make our communities unique. Once those characters are lost, they cannot be reclaimed. We can already see examples where developments have changed the appearance of our rural roads. Along Strickland Road, residents now look at the back of homes where they once saw our open countryside. Then there's the one on Stony Hill Church Road with multiple homes with one drive. Whether intentional or not, these decisions permanently change the character of our area, and it can't be undone. We do not get a do-over. As we consider future development standards, I hope we will place greater emphasis on buffers, landscaping, road frontage appearance, preservation of trees, and thoughtful design that respects the character of existing communities. I understand that affordable housing is a major concern, and I agree that we should work toward housing opportunities for future residents. But affordable housing should not come at the expense of the people who already lived here, the communities that have been built, or the rural character that makes Nash County special. The question should not simply be, how many homes can we build? The question should be, what kind of county we want to leave for the next generation. There are still significant questions from citizens regarding road standards, fire protection, water availability, subdivision density, the preservation of rural character, and the impact of data centers on the county resources. Those concerns deserve thoughtful discussion and clear answers before additional large-scale development is approved. Perhaps my greatest concern is the repeat statement that growth is coming and we cannot stop it. Why can't we slow it down? Growth should never serve the people who already live here, not overwhelm them. Infrastructure should come before development, not after. Roads, water capacity, emergency services, school and public safety systems should be prepared before we approve growth that depends on them. Property taxes generate a small family home will never cover all the long-term costs associated with roads, public safety, schools, emergency services, and infrastructure expansions. We have to be honest, and we have to use reality. Our fire departments are already changing. I'm not asking for Nash County to stop growth forever. I'm asking Nash County to grow responsibly. For that reason, I respectfully ask this board to consider a temporary moratorium on new major subdivisions, data centers, and other things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right.
My name is Keisha Howell. I'm a resident of Middlesex. Our family operates a sixth-generation farm south of the river. I want to speak to you briefly about something that defines who we are, our land, our farms, and our agriculture heritage, and to urge this board to ensure that the Unified Development Ordinance protects all of those. Agriculture is not just a relic of our past. It's the backbone of our present economy. According to the 2022 USDA Census of Agriculture, Nash County has 375 farms covering more than 133,000 acres of land. Our farms in Nash County generated over $184 million in agriculture products last year. We ranked third in the entire state for tobacco sales, fourth for vegetables, and we also grow a lot of other crops. Nash County farmers are not small operators. Our average farm size is 355 acres, nearly double the state average. Our land we have is working, and it's feeding our citizens. But land is under pressure. Residential development is expanding into our rural areas, and the decisions made in this UDO will either protect what we have or allow it to be carved up one subdivision at a time. When large rural tracts are divided into smaller residential lots that are not served by county water or county sewer, the consequences go far beyond aesthetics. Every new well drilled in a rural area draws from the same groundwater that our farmers depend on to irrigate their crops. Nash County farmers irrigate nearly 2,800 acres of cropland. When residential density rises and wells multiply, water tables drop, farms suffer, crops fail, livelihoods are threatened. That is why this board must take seriously the proposal to control residential lot sizes and reduce the number of new lots subdivided directly from our state roads. There's also the matter of our natural resources. Farmland is not just economically productive. It filters water, absorbs floodwater, supports wildlife habitat, and keeps our airs clean. When it's converted to pavement and rooftops, these functions are gone. And here in North Carolina, we're losing farmland at an alarming rate. According to the American Farmland Trust, North Carolina lost over 730,000 acres of farmland to development in the last 15 years. That's 133 acres every day. North Carolina is now ranked #1 in the entire nation for farmland loss due to low-density residential development, exactly the kind of concerns we're looking at in this UDO. It's right here in our backyard. Once this farmland is gone, it doesn't come back. I urge this board to support a conservation subdivision model in this updated UDO, one that protects our most productive soils and our farmland and our forest. I urge you to maintain meaningful minimum lot size requirements that protect our groundwater. And I urge you to preserve and strengthen Nash County's Voluntary Agriculture District program, which is one of the most important tools we have to protect farmland from condemnation and conversion. The families who have farmed this county for generations deserve an ordinance that takes their future as seriously as it does growth. Our agricultural heritage is not just sentiment, it's economy, it's environmental, and it's deeply tied to our identity as a county. And if I'll direct you to the seal behind you, that industry and that agriculture is part of our background from when we were founded in 1777. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Todd Bissett, 3553 Peachtree Hills Road, Spring Hope, North Carolina. And I also, as a lot of the other people have said, I appreciate y'all doing and going through this stuff, because I do believe this is the start of what we need in the county. I believe that we do need to slow down a little bit. There's a lot of stuff I heard I like, a lot of stuff I don't like, but I don't understand a lot of the stuff, so I put my name on the email so I can get in. I'd like to come back to see more meetings. I don't understand the stub roads. I got a housing development trying to go next to me. I'm not building a housing development. My children are not going to build a housing development, and I don't really want a stub road pulled right up to my property. I don't like that. You know, put put a line, house, whatever. I don't like the stub road. So the county and water, sewer, the infrastructure, all of it. I think, which comes first? Are we putting the horse before the buggy or the buggy before the horse? What, we need to get it straight. What comes first, infrastructure or the housing and the people? A lot of things, the driveways. We came up here, where I live at, with a development going in. We didn't like, they wanted to change it to R30, so it got denied. Planning board said, no, we don't want to do that. But one of the reasons they didn't want to do it, because they didn't want a lot of driveways coming out into the main roads. So we kept it at R40. I thought that was great, but guess what? 18 driveways right in the middle of the road, because at R40, you can do whatever you want. R30, you got some restrictions. We just didn't want that many houses. So it don't always work out, but there's a lot of stuff that the people, the citizens of Nash County need to learn. That's why I want more meetings. Slow down. Everybody in here has got a lot of questions we don't understand. Like I said, the stub roads and stuff. We need some more meetings and go through it. Everybody needs to listen to the citizens, the fire department. I believe if you're going to have a big subdivision right across from my father's house, 150 homes just got approved. There's no county water at this time, no sewer. The fire department's got to have water. It's terrible. You got to listen to them, The buy right, 6,000 square foot lot. I know you said we've already got that, but man, that is, to me, I don't know how everybody else feels, that's kind of ridiculous, 6,000 square feet. So, it's just hard for me to understand everything. We're moving so fast, and I don't understand it all, and I want people to learn more about what we're trying to do instead of just passing it along. And I think Adam knows it. And a couple of things we talked about, Adam said it earlier, some of this stuff we're passing cost on to the developers. So I want everybody to understand we may be passing the cost on to the developers up front, but at the end of the day, the developer's going to get his money back because somebody's going to buy that house, that property from them. And I'm not against it. Don't get me wrong. If you own that property, you should be able to do what you want to with it, okay? But we need to have some restrictions if you're going to put 300 houses in there. And I do believe we need to wait for the new board to come back or get in before we do a lot of stuff. And I do want you guys to remember that the citizens of Nash County elected all of y'all, and I want y'all to kind of listen. I hope that you have favor towards the citizens, a little bit to the developers and stuff, because I understand I'm a contractor, been in the business for a long time, so we all have to do. But remember where we came from, and I'm going to end it on this. I believe the majority of y'all were born and raised in Nash County, in the country, but the majority of y'all going to end up dying in the city because they're going to build all around us. The country's gone. There ain't going to be no farmland. It's going to be all houses, stores, sheets. So born and raised in the country, die in town, never moved. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I do want to bring up one just point of clarity. I know the conversation has been had on a number of different occasions, not only tonight, but throughout my tenure at Nash County. I know the board has heard it with concern over driveways along existing DOT roads. One of the caveats that we ensured to be as part of this ordinance was a requirement for major subdivisions, which if you remember is 5 or more units, to have an interior road network and that they derive their vehicular access from those interior roads. So it ensures that you do not have a circumstance where you have driveway after driveway on those existing roads. So I just want to make that point very clear.
All right, thank you. Next presenter. Good evening.
Good evening. Hey, y'all.
All right.
My name is Katie Harville. I am a resident of Bailey, and I am a transplant to North Carolina and to Nash County. and we have loved living here in the last 8 years or so. I personally work in historic preservation and environmental policy and have done so for the last 15 years, and so I can understand what an undertaking going through this document is and trying to update it. And at the end of the day, I can understand the hesitation to be what I have seen throughout my years with both the federal and the state government. You don't want to be the bad guy, right? You do have the obligation to allow your county to move forward, but to also hear your constituents' concerns. And so we do appreciate y'all doing all that. I had a couple of questions. A lot of them have been addressed by my neighbors, so I'll leave it at that, and I'll leave the whole list with you. I did see where in Article 10, because I think I missed it at the work session, where you said there was only one change to the definitions section. And if that's correct, I have concerns about that.
So the main change is to shift the main change is the definition of the major versus minor subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I may have misspoke there. There were a few changes in ensuring that we had lot type definitions, all that kind of stuff listed in there as well. So there were no major changes to those definitions, as it was not something that we were asked to address.
Gotcha. So I feel like as y'all start digging into the data center language, we are going to need quite a few more definitions added to that section, and I have all those listed in my little list there, because the process and the procedure here is going to be really important, and I know that y'all know that. But so making sure that whenever we get to the portion where the public can actually read the language that y'all have updated, giving folks time to read those, understand it, is going to be really important. Because I do this every single day, and it takes a lot for me to read a document like this. There are so many pages to this document, and there's a lot to absorb, synthesize, be able to comment on. So I do feel some of the same concerns that we are moving pretty quickly on this one. I know to y'all it's not quick, y'all been working on it a lot, but for us it is pretty quick. And then just from the perspective of, again, environmental assessments, I know that there is a hesitancy there because we trust that our state and federal government are going to have our best interest at heart and make sure that those things happen. And that's great, but change starts where you are. And the only people who are genuinely going to care about Nash County are the people who live in Nash County. And so I think making sure that you take a look at what our rights are as far as a county being able to institute requirements for environmental assessments. I mean, there's general statutes out there for that. They gave it to us for a reason, for us to use it when appropriate. So considering that, making sure that we do what we can, and just making sure that we are taking the time to make an educated decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Did want to say one quick thing. In understanding that this is a large document to go through, as part of our reorganization, something that I'm very proud of is we've actually reduced quite a bit the number of pages of this ordinance without having to remove and exclude language, actually reducing it by 50 to 70 pages at this point in time. So that should help, although I apologize, it's still quite a long document.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. I don't know if this microphone working or not.
It's working.
But I just want to, I'm Linda Howell. I live in the village. I have a townhouse in the village, Westridge Crossing, Rocky Mount. And we are so, and we've got several people here that I'm representing too, we are so much against a data center. I've researched it a lot. I've talked to a lot of people, and I've not heard one person say anything good about it. And like this, talking about jobs. Well, I understand once they have the construction and the place is built, they don't need much staff. There you go, no revenue. So, and the water, and just so many things that we hear negative about it. So we're just hoping
that y'all will really consider all the bad things we're hearing, and we just don't need a data center in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, anyone else?
So also just a quick note that the way land development regulation in North Carolina works is there's no overlap between the county and any of our towns or cities' jurisdictions. And so nothing that would be in the UDO, everything we're talking about tonight will apply only in the rural unincorporated areas of the county, because each of our towns and cities have their own version of a UDO that they're responsible for enforcing and that they get to set the standards for.
All right. Good evening.
Most people in the audience may know me as Crazy Karen. On the Bailey site, my name is Paula Lamb, and I had 4 pages of stuff written up to speak about tonight, but a lot of it I've crossed off because it's already been covered. In my opinion, I feel that the UDO needs to limit the growth of subdivisions, especially in the rural area, allowing the county to address the issues before any more rapid growth continues. Overcrowding of our schools and teacher shortages, short staffing and overworked EMS and deputy sheriff's personnel, lack of convenience centers which at times are filled to capacity, and traffic congestion on rural roads that farm equipment also travels in a densely populated area. My main concern socially about the UDO is the increase on taxes causing displacement of existing residents. I have a question about the landscaping. The double buffers should also be included between residents and agriculture area. This would be due to the possibility of chemical spray drifting into neighboring residential lots. This is my question. If 10-foot trees already exist, does the developer still have to install a 10-foot barrier? If not, what if the original owner decides to log his trees? Will he also be allowed to do so, leaving no barrier at all? The steering committee rejected proposed preservation requiring as part of the overall discussion of open space requirements. Loggers are required a 200-foot buffer from wetland and a 50-foot buffer from streams. This rule should also apply to developments due to runoff and flooding. The steering committee approved language encouraging developments to install playgrounds and sidewalks. I feel like encouraging is not enough. Sidewalks should be required in all subdivisions, not just in townhouses and multifamily dwelling units. With no sidewalks in a residence to walk on, they will be walking in the road. The children have nowhere to play, so they will be playing and riding their bikes in the road. It has been brought up several times at previous meetings how farmers will be able to access their fields, but I have not heard any solutions to that question yet. It was suggested that the farmer drive through the developments with no consideration to the danger to those living in these developments, especially to the children. No consideration to the farmer being able to maneuver his equipment between parked cars, trash cans, and other obstacles sitting along the roadsides. Even the volunteer fire departments have concerns about reaching their fire calls and refilling their fire trucks with no fire hydrants installed in these developments, and the road being only 20 foot wide and at times impassable. These are the same roads that the developer wants the farmer to drive through to get to his fields. I think the UDA needs to consider the 24-foot roads to allow fire trucks and water tanks accessibility to these homes in case of emergency. The UDO needs to consider these changes. Those of you who were more concerned about the cost and the liability to the county, just how much value do you put on someone's life? Overdevelopment is not just about building too much, it's about building the wrong kinds of developments in the wrong place at the wrong time. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right, thank you.
Regarding your specific question about landscape buffers and the requirement to install or maintain existing landscaping, the only opportunity for a developer who is required to follow those standards to use the existing landscaping is if it meets the standards of the ordinance. So that being said, pine trees are not shade trees, and if those are left in that 10-foot buffer, the developer would be required to plant in accordance with the landscaping standards. If there was the possibility of some mature stands of trees to be utilized as part of the landscape standards and the shrubs associated with those trees, a licensed arborist or surveyor may go out and provide the explanation that the landscaping buffer meets the requirements of the ordinance.
All right, thanks. Anyone else wishing to speak? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Sam Johnson, live in Red Oak, and I work for CT Williams Corporation. Wanted to start with a couple of points. One, just on data centers. I believe at the joint meeting, there was discussion about maybe trying to make them as restrictive as possible. I didn't really see in the summary document that there was any change to what was discussed that night, so I'd be interested in knowing what changes may have come up with that. The other thing, I think it's item number 15 on the handout regarding buffers. We're very familiar with buffers in our request for rezoning. And in a conditional rezoning situation, we basically just accepted what was asked of us, and we agreed to do so. But in adding it to the UDO, we brought up some language that I see in the implementation action regarding incompatibility of adjacent land uses. And what we brought up during some of our rezoning requests was that when the county's classification is residential and agriculture, then I think it needs to be maybe a little bit more clear as to why the buffers have to be between residential and agriculture operations when it's all one classification within the same land use. So just bring that to the attention. The other thing, couple of points that I'd made, I know sidewalks have been mentioned several times, and I know they're not required in single-family residential subdivisions, but I've heard it a lot from the community. So the other issue there I think that needs to be considered is that sidewalks would be put inside the DOT right-of-way. So I think DOT would have to chime in on that, like in the conservation subdivisions where sidewalks are required. They would then become DOT's responsibility to keep up. So those things, I think, need to be considered, and I'm not sure if Kim Moore's here tonight, but she should probably have some input on that. Also, just the fact that all of these things, as a developer, all of these things continues to add costs and add costs and add costs to developments, which has been said tonight would be passed on to the builder and passed on to the owner of the home. I've heard several comments tonight also about affordable housing. And this is just really going to push development beyond what's affordable. And I think Ms. Jane, I think, lady that spoke earlier, sort of summed it up, and I think we need to think about, do we really want affordable housing in Nash County to be mobile homes? And just something to think about. All right, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
To Mr. Johnson's point, we have not revealed any new development standards for data centers since the joint meeting. That's something we're continuing to work on. You can trust that they will be stricter and more substantial than what was proposed there, but that will be a topic for discussion at a future meeting. You're right, we have not revealed that. Also, on the topic of sidewalks, one of the reasons we're not proposing their mandatory inclusion in just traditional single-family residential development is our understanding that NCDOT will not maintain sidewalks. All sidewalks will have to be maintained by a property or homeowners association that is, tied to that neighborhood and made up of the property owners that do that. If anybody from NCDOT is here who could correct me on that, I don't believe NCDOT is in the sidewalk maintenance business.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Good evening.
Hey there. Yes, sir, I'm David Williams. My thing was, I would like to have more time to look at what's being done as far as UDO. I think everybody would agree there needs to be some changes, but I think it's being pushed too quick. We've got the Board of Commissioners here, this whole side will be gone. I think it's November, is that correct?
December.
In December. So I personally think we need to give it more time to study it. I'm not against some of the changes. One thing I am against, and nobody's I've heard mention, is the EV chargers is not necessary. I mean, if you're going to do an EV charger, you will have that at your house where you have your car. Nobody's going to, But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But my personal request would be that this is looked into further and more time is put to it, since we do have 3 of the commissioners who will not be here in December. That's all.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right.
My name is Joseph Bailey. I live on Grand Brantley Road, Bailey, North Carolina. And I know all y'all are familiar with my petition. I've already submitted that. And right now I've got about 700-800 signatures. And there's a lot of things that y'all have put in that's good that I agree with. I do have a few questions, as far as like the conservation subdivision, who's going to end up being in control of the land that's going to be left to be farmland, and how is it, how do you decide who's going to farm it? And like some of the others I mentioned earlier, I know he said that it won't be, like trees and stuff won't be counted. It needs to be farmland that's going to actually be counted in it. You can't, there's a little bit of gray area there, which I'm sure y'all will fix. But all I know is I've done spoken about this many a times. I haven't seen anything mentioned about public safety capacity assessments, with our sheriff's office, EMS, and fire departments. I think that the whole county needs to be evaluated, because, if you go out somewhere around Whitaker's or, some parts out there around Gold Rock and stuff, I mean, there's not much out there at all. And, which I know ain't nobody building out there, so I guess you don't need it. But we need to have some kind of idea, where the county's at as far as keeping up with all these people. I've said that multiple times. I think that should be required before any new subdivision is built. And we really need a moratorium. Like everybody's been saying, everything is going too fast, and the moratorium's in my petition. And that would give us time to do these assessments and get them done and see where we could use more growth and where we don't need any more growth. Because, I mean, right now, Bailey, I feel like Bailey and Middlesex has seen most of the growth. And I just, I don't know, I can't, I never thought I would, I know my granddaddy, I've talked to him about all this, I never thought I would see anything like this, the way things have changed, and it's not what we want. I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I've actually had people that have told me they're going to move away from Nash County because of the growth that has come. And I'm sick and tired of hearing that growth is coming. I mean, growth ain't got to come. There's got to be somewhere that's going to provide for these people who's going to have food and everything. I mean, there's got to be somewhere for that. I mean, so I just, and I'm sorry, I'm tired. I've been working all day. We're wide open right now, and I haven't been able to prepare for this or anything, so I'm just trying to do the best I can, but something needs to be done. And I think the moratorium would be the best thing, because you're not putting people's lives at risk to stop and see and, you know, evaluate all this stuff. Ain't nobody's lives going to be at risk doing that. Nobody's going to lose their life if they can't get a house built. I mean, I'm sorry. I know everybody, you know, they want houses, they want affordable housing, but we're not Raleigh. We're not Zebulon, we're not Wendell, we're Nash County, and there's a reason why the people love it here so much is because this is our home and it's being destroyed. That's how I feel about it, and that's how a lot of people feel about it. Our whole way of life is being destroyed. I mean, you can't even hardly go fishing or go hunting no more because don't nobody want to give you permission because all these people moving down here, and I know it's off topic, but that's what's going on here. Man, it's...
You got 1 minute.
Enough is enough. I mean, we can slow down and wait and evaluate all this stuff, and that's what needs to be done. I've talked to deputies, I've talked to firefighters, I've talked to EMS workers. Matter of fact, I was looking for the story where they said that the EMS director, the old EMS director, he had to resign because he thought that he couldn't keep working up here and knowing that people's lives are being put at risk because they couldn't keep up, and that was like 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I was trying to find it so I could read up about it, but so it's obvious, nobody's here from the sheriff's office. I can't believe that. And I think that's part of Nash County's problem, like just with the jail being, needing to be redone. Y'all built a brand new courthouse before you fix the jail. That don't make no sense, because you can have court anywhere. You can have court out there in the street if you got to. So I think Nash County's too concerned with looking nice instead of actually doing good and, you know, having everything that we need. So it needs to slow down. You need a moratorium.
That's time. All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Good evening.
Good evening.
right.
My name is Libby Daniels. I have spent the past couple of evenings reading the 43 pages, the 4 pages, and the 23 pages of all the, whether it was the summary of the recommended changes, the major regulatory changes, and obviously the summary of the other recommended changes. I come to you this evening, whatever. I feel like all these UDO changes are way overdue. We have known for years development was obviously moving this way. Wilkes and everybody, there again, wanting to come to Nash County. I've always considered, I'm almost 60 years old. Where I live now is being threatened by a development that land was just purchased, a farm directly beside me. Where I live, my particular farm that I was fortunate to inherit, has been in my family for almost 200 years. Some of you may remember there on Womble Road, Sidney Griffin's Peach Orchard Farm. It was in operation or whatever for over 50 years. People from all over came to my grandparents' farm to pick the best peaches or whatever. Unfortunately, when my grandparents got up into their 80s and 90s, and they became responsibility of my parents taking care of them. There was still the peach orchard. My parents didn't want to take on the responsibility of tending those over 800 trees on this particular farm. So obviously, they were all pulled up, dug up, and those acres were turned into and added to the existing cropland, which grew tobacco. I've always been told growing up or whatever, my granddaddy on his horse and buggy had the best tobacco, carrying it to Rocky Mount or whatever to sell. Any farmer that here in Nash County that over the years that has tended my farm has production, whether it be sweet potatoes, hay, soybeans, or whatever, and the tobacco, it's always produced a wonderful crop. Right now, I have an individual, whatever, for my purposes. I have been living there. Like I said, I was fortunate to inherit this farm, obviously from my parents who have passed. I've been there for 26 years, and I have hay that is produced on my farm. With these UDO proposals, one of my main concern is under Article 4, you make comment, or comment was made in Section 4 dealing with 4.3 in reference to perimeter buffer requirements, basically double buffers between commercial and individual development and residential development. Is there anything in place for already existing residents to block those individuals from the new development, say farmland versus there again, because you make comment there again, it says commercial, industrial against the residential. And so I'm an individual landowner, so I'm there again, not commercial and all that stuff. So I wanted to know if there was something already in place. Back to in reference to the farm that is being sold to me, is there proposal in effect or whatever, or guidelines or ordinance that are in place when a developer does buy the various farmland where there are wetlands located on the property? Is it the developer's responsibility or whatever? Because I'm going to piggyback on this individual that talked about your comprehensive environmental assessments. Is it the developer's responsibility, or is it, there again, the planning board to already know that wetlands are on this particular property and that they do the proper assessments to identify and evaluate the ecological features or potential impacts on the wetlands and other sensitive areas? The farm next to me, there are two existing wetlands that do cross this particular property. I have seen the plans from the developer, and you have lots that are going across wetlands. I've already been in contact, obviously, the past couple of months with the regional water quality control people. Just had a conversation yesterday with an individual in Raleigh with the Division of Environmental Quality, whatever, asking what the fees and fines are for if somebody buys a particular lot that the wetlands cross.
That's tough.
What kind of fee that they're going to encounter if they cut into those wetlands, there again, to make their lot bigger. But thank you for giving me time. Appreciate it. And like I said, this UDO, I think, will benefit everybody if it's done correctly.
All right, thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to speak? All right. Seeing none, I want to thank everyone for coming and expressing your opinion. And also I want to thank Adam Tyson and Adam Culpepper for presenting and being part of answering the questions the best that we could at this time. As Adam mentioned in the beginning, that this is still a working document that the staff, our consultant, and the county commissioner, we have worked on this document and we have presented it to the public to hear your input, and we thank you for that. Like I said, we're going to take what you have said in consideration, and you will have the opportunity to view it again. And at this time, if any commissioner has any comments, I will open the floor for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Leggett.
Okay, first, I would just like to say thank you to all who came out tonight, whether you spoke or just sat and listened. We appreciate you and appreciate all the feedback. It's certainly critical to this process. And then second, I just wanted to make a comment to my board and to the committee and to the consultants. In reference to the conservation subdivision, before we can implement that, I feel like there has to be a prescribed method by which the set-aside land will be preserved so that that land can not just simply be resold or redeveloped, just creating a mini-city in effect. So just one technical thing that we need to make sure of before we implement something new like that. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I just want to emphasize what Commissioner Leggett just said. I truly do appreciate the citizens that took time. A lot of them said they've been busy working today. You had a lot of other things you could be doing tonight. I do appreciate you taking the time to come out tonight. It is your county. We work at the pleasure of you. We're here to serve you. Our job is service. So thank you for sharing your concerns tonight. Your voices and opinions do matter. And my door, my email, my phone is always open for anybody in Nash County to have a discussion with, to discuss it further. I do not have all the answers. There's a lot of this stuff as mentioned that it's still up in the air. As Commissioner Leggett said as well, there's a lot of things here that we need clarity on ourselves, that from our last meeting, we don't have information, but I think it is past time for the public to be involved and share their comments and their opinions as well. So, some things I heard tonight was sidewalks, playgrounds and subdivisions, water, sewer, wider roads, preserving farmland, concerns about data centers, the need for fire hydrant, and of course, agriculture is important to Nash County. Just a few facts to kind of tie into everything that you said tonight. Water is a major concern for Nash County. You couldn't hit the head on the nail any better than you did tonight by talking about this. We currently have 4,500 to 5,000 citizens on water in Nash County. All of our water except one well. We have one well active in Nash County. Otherwise, all of our water comes to the city of Rocky Mount. And what's just happened, we've gone mandatory water restrictions here because of the drought, because we're getting our water from the Rocky Mount Reservoir. So water is a concern. Sewer is a concern. We have 246, 47 approximately people on our sewer system in Nash County. As mentioned earlier, there needs to be some investments done in infrastructure. We do not have a sewer treatment facility in Nash County. Again, we pump everything to the city of Rocky Mount. So definitely concerns around that. We're one of the few counties around, matter of fact, all the counties I know of around us all have countywide water. Nash County does not. Some of our previous commissioners made a decision not to take advantage of grants, and it's got us in the shape we're in today. We've got to deal with that. Those grants have now lapsed. That opportunity is not there. Our staff has worked very hard at trying to take advantage of what grants they can get now, but it's definitely something we got to do. We need additional resources in countywide water because as subdivisions come in, they are taking effects on our existing citizens' water supply. I've had numerous phone calls, conversations in regards to, my well's gone dry. And those of you that don't know, the average well now is $10,000, average based on how deep it is. It can vary. But, just on their natural resources alone, there was conversations about the data centers. We're not ready for them. And I've made a couple times in commissioner meetings, and I hope my fellow commissioners will join me in this, that we need a moratorium on data centers. Some of our towns in our county have already placed this upon and voted upon it and put a moratorium in place. I think we need one in. I think it's clear tonight from the feedback from you. We're not prepared to move forward with this at this time, at least in my opinion.
It needs to be more work to be done. We need more input from other citizens in the county before we make these kind of decisions. You know, and you hear people talk about the growth. The growth is here, and the growth is going to continue to come. As of last year, North Carolina was #1 in the nation, not just in farmland loss, as somebody mentioned, but also in growth. Over 84,000 new residents came to North Carolina, #1 in the nation. #2 was Texas at 67,000, South Carolina at 66,000, and Tennessee at 42,000. They're all coming our direction. So the growth is going to continue. So we've got to put the infrastructure and things in place to be able to address this. And we need to move forward carefully. As mentioned here, we need to step back and take a breath on this. We need to give clear direction to our developers so they know how to develop. We need to make it smart development. I think this conservation subdivision has got great potential. It will preserve 40 to 50% of the land that we're losing today that's being taken out of farmland. It will permanently preserve in a conservation easement to where it will always be used as agricultural, farmland, livestock land, or either forestry. So it does preserve our heritage and our culture in Nash counties, which is what we were founded on, we were built on, and what we're known for. And it has a tremendous economical impact to our county. So we don't need to lose that. So again, just thank you. Please continue to come out to the next meetings. Let your voices be heard. They are not falling on deaf ears. We are listening. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Wilkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, thank everyone for coming out, but I have one thing I want to say. A few of you have come to the podium and said to wait until the new board members are seated, which won't be until December of this year. I just want to remind everyone, we have 3 commissioners up here, and yes, those 3 will be gone, but those 3 commissioners have combined experience of 65-plus years. And to suggest we wait until the new members are sworn in and taken their seats before we vote on the UDO, I feel would not only be not so much a disservice to them, but a disservice to the citizens of Nash County. These commissioners know where Nash County has been, where it is today, and where it's going. And to put this off when the staff has done such a tremendous job of notifying citizens, getting information out there to you via email or however, newspaper, these commissioners need to be included this year, and we need to vote on this UDO this year and have that 65-plus, I would even venture to say it's 70 years experience with those 3. We need them we need their input on this UDO. We don't want, and nothing against the 3 commissioners coming on board, I believe, well, one is chair of the planning board, but we need to respect these 3 commissioners. They have a lot to offer. Their experience is invaluable, and we need to recognize that as citizens of Nash County. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Outlaw.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I appreciate the comments, the input. For me, I took a lot of notes, but I heard 3 recurring comments. Most recurred the most number of times. The first was no data centers or as restrictive as possible on data centers. Now, I'm leaving this board in December, but I have no problem stating where I stand on any of these issues. I do not support data centers, number one. The second thing was the 24-foot road width. Yes, that was a consensus vote at our joint meeting with the planning board. I voted for the 24-foot road width for obvious reasons, which the fire department people have eloquently stated here tonight. We need that. The third thing, and respectfully to my colleague, Commissioner Wilkins, I think that we owe it to these 3 commissioners coming on for them to have involvement in this process before we just pass it. Yes, I think we're moving too fast. I think it's obvious there are a lot of questions that are unanswered. We need to slow down, and we need to allow this new board to have input into this process. Again, I thank you for being here tonight. I hope we will do this again, and I'm sure we'll get more comments very similar to what we've heard tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Belfield?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say also that I appreciate the large turnout for this Nash County Unified Development Ordinance plan that's proposed. I had a question that I really wanted to ask at the beginning because the chairman didn't recognize me. Were the 3 new members that are coming on, were they invited to be at this meeting tonight? And I do see one that out there now, but I didn't see him, that person at the early part of the session. I agree with Commissioner Outlaw that they need to fully understand this Unified Development Ordinance because people are going to be, they're coming on new, people are going to be asking questions. They need to have the information, they need to have heard what the people said here tonight and prepare themselves. You need it. When I came on the board 28 years ago, I attended, well, I knew a lot about the Board of Commissioners because I worked for Nash County and I made reports to them. And it's good. When I went on the board, the very first meeting, I felt real comfortable. I even made motions and second motions and even had some suggestions because I was ready. I didn't come on without being ready because I had the advantage, like I said earlier, of working for the county and making reports to the commissioners. On units, let me see my notes here. Oh, yeah, fire codes and building these family units. I didn't hear anything, I didn't read anything that firewalls. Now, I saw a situation in Houston, Texas, when someone, they were living on the end part of it, left some grease on the stove, and it rose, it got in the ceiling. There were no firewalls. There were about 20 residents within there. It swept right on down and destroyed all of them. And the city got busy real quick in passing ordinance that must be firewall. And you're building multiple units, it need to be in there, a requirement that you have firewalls. And that was something that I want to emphasize. There are a lot of other things that notes that I took. Public housing, parking lots for these developments that are multiple, and block length, and also I think it would be a good idea to include also in there bicycle routes. Gonna need them because people do a lot of exercising now with bicycles, so that's something that need to be addressed. And I'll stop at that. It's getting late.
All right.
I need to I need to hurry up and get home.
We all
And I don't mind telling you why I need to get home. My son is out tonight. He had to work.
All right.
And my wife is there by herself, and she doesn't need to really be there too long by herself. So I need to.
All right, thank
Move
you,
on. So-
Commissioner Bearfield.
Thank you
Commissioner-
for listening, and I look forward to continue working on with this until December.
All right, Commissioner Davis.
I will be very brief because I know Mr. Belfield needs to get home to see his wife and take care of his wife. I certainly respect that. But I, too, want to thank everybody that took the time to come out tonight. It's a large crowd. We needed a large crowd, and I'm glad to see you here. It's a very diverse crowd. Some of you are developers, some of you are landowners, many of you are concerned citizens about what's going on in Nash County. This is not an easy job. As it said, the ones that served on the committee, we've been at it for a year now, and there have been some long meetings. We've been here quite a bit. But it's important business. And I think you see how complex it is. The growth is going to come. We can slow it down. We can do it better. But most likely, we're not going to be able to stop it. I do think we all have heard numerous times tonight about affordable housing. We need more affordable housing in Nash County. We need it in this entire region, particularly in eastern North Carolina. How we blend development and the cost of development and get affordable housing, I'm not smart enough to figure that one out. I'll just tell you that. But don't forget that affordable housing is very important to your children, your grandchildren, and the cost of a home now, quite frankly, our company built home, and I'm embarrassed to put a home on the market for what it costs. It's just gone up so much, and it's totally out of our control. I do want to comment just a little bit on the water system. I became a commissioner in 2002. I immediately went to work trying to get a countywide water system. And we have applied for every grant, every low interest loan that you can apply for. And we've been somewhat successful. But 24 years later, we've got, I heard Mr. Howell say 5,000 customers. I know that's to be correct in the range. So it's not easy to put in a countywide water system. It's very, very expensive. And it can't be done with ad valorem tax money. It has to be done as an enterprise fund. It has to pay its own way. So you got to keep that in mind. I think it is important to get our people water throughout the county. I also understand it's very important to do a water system that will provide fire service. I'm not sure that's possible. In fact, I'm almost sure it's probably not possible. And what I don't want to happen is to see us not be able to continue the very slow growth for our water system simply because it won't pay for itself. It has to pay for itself somehow. So please keep that in mind. And again, I thank you for all the comments. I listened to every one of them very intensively. I know what your concerns are, and keep working with us. The document that you were shown tonight is a much improved over what we had. I will promise you that. And there is more work to be done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand down.
All right, thank you. I want to just give one statistics from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. The total population for Nash County, which includes all our cities, Rocky Mount, was 94,970 people. In 2025 was 99,191 residents. So we've been growing about 1,000 people a year, including all the towns. So we keep talking about growth, but I guess the thing is that we're not going to see 10,000 people come in 1 year, according to the statistics. We're going to grow, but it's not going to be that sudden. I want to say that you can go online. The staff have put online our meetings of tonight, and our previous meetings of our joint meetings of the Unified Development Ordinance and everything that you need to read about and try to understand. You can go online and try to read it and try to interpret it. And if you have questions, like I say, you can always try to get in contact with the staff, and they will try to answer your question. That's all I have. I want to thank everyone again for coming, and at this time, I would
Mr. Chairman.
entertain.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I just one more time remind people if they would like to be included on the mailing list for this project, the email distribution list, to find out about future developments or future meetings, we do have that podium at the back wall that they can add their email address to, and we'll add them to the mailing list.
All right, thank you. At this time, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's moved by Commissioner Davis and second by Commissioner Bellfield that we adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where?